Well, hello there. So today I want to talk a little bit about uh, giving access to things in AWS, talking about identity and access management, and we're going to look at a few things, not really in the Learner Lab because Learner Lab does not let you do a lot of stuff with IAM. Okay, so I'm starting my lab, but I have a bunch of things up here that I'll link down below. The main thing is the documentation for AWS Identity and Access Management, IAM. Okay, that's a term you should get familiar with if you're working with IT much at all. Anyway, it's basically how we assign people to be able to do different tasks. So if we look here, it talks about there's two main types. There's the identity-based and there's the resource-based. Okay, so and that will start to get kind of tricky. In fact, there's some situations that I would just have to play with to understand which one would win. If we scroll down here to the very bottom, it talks about the evaluation logic. So I've opened that up here to evaluate the logic. So this is where you have, once again, you have these two, identity-based and resource-based. In fact, you could have multiple on each identity too. You could have a policy. You could have multiple policies, and they could have different information. Okay, so if we come down here, when it comes to talks about the identity-based policy and the resource policy, the total permissions is everything. But if these are like an explicit deny, those are removed. So there's effective permissions. Okay, explicit denies usually win. Depending on the IAM system, sometimes the most specific one wins. Sometimes it's the last one. Sometimes it's denies win over allows. But there's a lot of different ways. Sometimes they both have to agree. If they don't agree, then it doesn't play. So anyway, I'm going to link to a couple other AWS resources that can give you some examples. So for example, here's a deny for a customer bucket. So this is JSON. Once again, you should get familiar with it. It's basically a way for a computer to easily read information. And it's also decent for people, but it's more for a computer. You see version, the date, statement. Here's the statement in the bracket. And then the access, the effect, the action. So there are a lot of different examples out there. If you need to do something, I often just Google and see if someone's already figured it out and get theirs, or you can write it. So there are different stages to being able to do stuff like this. So general understanding of what it does, then being able to read it, and then being able to write it. I really don't like to write these. So there are automated tools that can help, but understanding it, reading it is the first steps, and then writing it would be the third. So I hope this is helpful. Let's get into AWS and take a peek at what we have access to in the Learner Lab. So the Learner Lab is something that educational institutions can give their students that give access to AWS without a credit card. There's a certain amount of money that's allowed. So this one has $100. I've used $1.70 so far. So if we come here, we want to go to IAM. So in IAM, you should be able to see the users, user groups, roles, policies. Let's look and see what users I have. It doesn't look like it. I probably don't have the ability to create a user. Let's just see. We're going to create Callie. Next, and create user. And yeah, I do not have the identity. I do not have the rights, the access to be able to do this. But at least I can view things. So let's go back to IAM. Let's look at roles, and so we have these roles here. We can take a look at these roles. So let's look. Here's a service role for Cloud9, and it has one policy. So we can look at that policy. Now, with a policy, you have the permissions here and the versions. If we dig down far enough, we can usually see, the JSON right here. If you notice, there's different versions of this. So a lot of these, so the policies that are here that I can see, most of these are AWS managed, okay? So these are just created by AWS for you to use. You can create your own, just not in the Learner Lab. And you can manage them with using different types and stuff. So it's always good to give it a good description. You can use these policies that AWS has given. Oftentimes for businesses, they're at least a good starting point. They might have too many permissions or too few, and you might want to tweak them. Just realize if you tweak them, then you're not going to be able to get the updates to it if you're using your own custom one. So where if you're just using this standard one, if they fix something with it, it should automatically apply. Anyway, so we can look at IAM stuff here, but let's look at one from like S3. So S3, Simple Storage Service, is the ability to just store stuff. So here's testing student work. We can see here permissions and bucket policy. So right here, I could, so I could edit and write my own policy right here for this bucket. So if we think about it, a user may be given access to a bucket, but maybe that bucket owner doesn't want people to have access to it anymore, so they can remove that. Even though I have it in my role, in my permission list, the policy for the resource can change and remove that as well. Okay, so once again, today we looked at IAM. We talked a little bit about the different options, have all sorts of resources for you to look at. We looked at the JSON policies, and as well as not only just on the for the user role and permission base, but also at a resource level of the bucket policy. I hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll see you in the next video.